Another schoolmaster for Lorenzo. There better not be any shorts in here.
No, that's an awesome mutton snapper. Why don't you go ahead and
That
these guys all came late.
These are the two that came late.
All right, guys, which one is which? Guys, these are actually two different snapper species with two different limitations on what you can keep. So if you're gonna catch mangrove snapper with the intention on keeping them, you better know your rules. Guys, there's a lot to learn. So we're gonna show you how to identify some of our snapper species in Southeast Florida. Guys, we're gonna help you catch fish, and we're gonna help you know what to do in order to stay out of trouble if you're snapper fishing. Check this out. All right, guys, so these two snapper species, I mean, they look pretty similar. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people, especially if you're starting to fish, you know, just starting to get into fishing, if you catch one of these two species, you're not gonna be able to tell them apart. So this video is designed to help you maybe get started in helping identify some of your snapper species. Guys, snapper species, bottom fishing, there's a lot to learn. And we're gonna be talking about something called the snapper aggregate bag limit. So it's a 10 fish limit that the state waters in South Florida have, that you're allowed to keep 10 fish. And certain species like this guy right here, you can't keep 10 out of the 10. You can only keep 5 out of the 10. This guy, you can keep 10 out of 10. What does that mean, Dave? Well, let's get into this video and we're gonna show you all of the snapper species that we have that you can catch inshore. So there's some more that are offshore, but the inshore species, we're gonna show them to you, show you how to identify them, and talk to you about their size limits and bag limits. Okay, folks, these are 3 snapper species that we caught in the intracoastal. And we wanted to do is just go over a couple identification tips, because there are actually some laws that we are going to need to follow to make sure that we don't get in trouble. We want to make sure we're following the law if we're going to be harvesting fish. Now, all 3 of these species are extremely good to eat and are readily captured in our South Florida water, Broward County, Palm Beach, Dade, the Florida Keys, right? So these 3 species, guys, let's go over them real quick. These 3, and then we'll go over a few other snapper species that we might be able to get in our inland waters. So this is our mangrove snapper, or what is called a gray snapper. And they've got this reddish brown gray coloration. And as you can see, all 3 of these look pretty similar with only some minor differences. So guys, what we're gonna do is just give you a couple tips on what these guys, how to identify them from the others. Mangrove snappers, guys, have this reddish gray appearance. When you first catch them, they're a little bit more gray. They start turning red after they're in the cooler and so on. But probably the species that you'll confuse most with the mangrove snapper is a Cubera snapper. And the Cubera snapper don't have quite such a pointed nose right here. It's a little bit more rounded, and they've got those big fangs in the front. But other than that, they look very, very similar to fresh mangrove snapper. So guys, this is a mangrove snapper. Latin name is LUTJANUS GRISEUS, and they have to be 10 inches, guys, 10 inches from the tip of the mouth to the, you can kind of crunch the tail, and as long as that's at 10 inches right there, then you're allowed to harvest that fish. You're allowed to keep 5 per person within the 10 snapper aggregate collection. So you're allowed to keep 10 snapper, and of that 10, only 5 can be mangrove snapper. So guys, great fish. Probably the most common one we get, and this is a meat fish right there. All right, next fish, guys, this one is the Schoolmaster snapper, LUTJANUS APODUS. And this has been on ice now for a little bit, but some of the distinguishing characteristics of a schoolmaster are these yellow fins. And they have yellow fins, their tail is yellow, and they've got their little grayish, reddish coloration thing going. But when they're fresh, usually they have stripes going down the body right here, and that's a good way to tell them apart. But definitely they have the yellow fins going on. Schoolmasters, they have to be 10 inches from the tip of the snout till the edge of the tail in state waters and 12 inches in federal waters. You're allowed to keep 10 of these per day within the 10 snapper aggregate. So what does that mean? That means if you catch 10 schoolmasters and then you catch a mangrove, you have to throw the mangrove back. So you're only allowed to keep 10 aggregate snappers total. Now, if you're going to keep mangroves, you're only allowed to keep 5 mangroves, and then you can fill the other 5 of the 10 with other species. But if you want to catch only schoolmasters, you can keep all 10 of your aggregates can be schoolmasters, and their meat is excellent as well. Very good to eat. Okay, next one, guys. This is actually a species that's often confused with a mangrove snapper. This is a dog snapper, and they're a little bit more pink than the mangroves, and you'll see the pinkish coloration in the tail a little bit more. The mangrove snapper has a little bit more of a gray color in the tail. This one's a little bit more pink. But, I mean, it's really tough to tell them apart. But definitely the most distinguishing characteristics on the dog snapper is this blue line underneath the eye. My flash is kind of messing with, there we go. So this little blue line here underneath the eye is definitely the distinguishing marker for the dog snapper. And Latin name LUTJANUS joku, they've got to be 12 inches, all right? So 12 inches, and you are allowed to keep 10 of these within the 10 snapper aggregate. So same like the schoolmaster, you can keep 10 schoolmasters, you can keep 10 dog snappers, but you're only allowed to keep 5 mangroves, all right? Now, these are 3 species that we caught last night. As you can see, when they're in the cooler, they look very, very similar, and it takes a little bit of expertise to tell them apart. And we've got a couple other snapper species that I'll address quickly that are caught in inland waters, and let's just go through them quickly. The cobera, LUTJANUS cyanopterus, they have to be 12 inches. You're allowed to keep 5 per person within the 10 snapper aggregate, but no more than 2 can be over 30 inches. We don't have a cobera to show you, but if you happen to get cobera snapper, lucky you, they need to be over they need to be over 12 inches, but no more than 2 over 30. Okay, there's 2 other species of snapper that are a little bit more pink. They're actually pretty easily confused. We've got the lane snapper, LUTJANUS synagrus, and the lane snappers, they're real pink, real pretty fish. You got the pink coloration on the tail, and they've got this little black spot near the tail, and they have these little yellow stripes going down the side of the body. Very, very pretty fish. And you pull them up and they're fresh, they're bright pink. They only have to be 8 inches, and 10 snapper aggregate, it'll fall under there. Now, you got to make sure you know the difference between your lane and your mutton, because a mutton snapper, LUTJANUS analis, they've got to be 18 inches, and that's one of our larger snapper species on the east coast of Florida. We got red snappers on the west coast. We're not going to get into that. But the muttons have to be 18 inches. You got to have 5, you're allowed to keep 5 per person within the 10 snapper aggregate. All right, so got to know 18-inch mutton, that's a big fish. So you got to make sure that your mutton snapper, you can tell them the difference between the mutton and the lane. Usually the muttons don't have the yellow stripes on the side, and the lanes don't get anywhere near as big. 2 other species real quick. We have the mahogany snapper, which is LUTJANUS mahogany. So they've got to be 12 inches, and they've got the really pretty pink coloration, light pink coloration. You're allowed to keep 10 of them within the 10 snapper aggregate. And finally, the yellowtail snapper, which is definitely the easiest to tell apart. And it's actually our one snapper species that we're going to mention today that has a different genus. It doesn't fit in that LUTJANUS genus. It's Osiris chrysaris. And the yellowtail snappers got to be 12 inches from the tip of the nose to the fork of the tail. To the tip of the tail. And you are allowed to keep 10 snappers, 10 yellowtails within the 10 snapper aggregate. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm gonna get to filleting these bad boys because we've got to make dinner. And I hope you learned something. I learned something even actually making sure I got the information correct. I learned a few things that we needed to have. And one of the things is that starting January 1st in 2021, I didn't know this, but there's new laws on the type of gear that you're going to use when you're snapper fishing. So if you're going to go snapper fishing, you have to have a de-hooker on board to easily de-hook your fish. You've got to have that or you can get written a ticket. And you're not allowed to use stainless steel hooks. And so south of the Melbourne area, we can still use offset circle hooks, but if you're north of Melbourne, you got to use inline circle hooks only, and they have to be non-stainless steel. So there's a lot of stuff to remember, all the different sizes, all the different bag limits and so on. Make sure you have some type of documents that can help you identify things while you're on the water. But guys, hope you learned something. Give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and let's get out there and rip some lips. Until next time, take care, stay safe, God bless, watch you live.